After another crazy week in the NFL with the largest, heaviest favorite going down again in week 2, we head to week 3 survivor picks and previews to take the best options this week. Looking at the potential picks here, you see a lot of teams favored by 6 or 7 points. Most of them teams that we've seen this year. A couple new faces like the Browns and the Raiders, and a couple tried and true teams like the Chiefs and Bills that are on this list. Let's take a look at some of the picks we might want to avoid and think twice about, and looking at some of the best picks and best value on the board here. But as always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep getting this and other NFL content throughout the NFL season. And always a reminder, we want to look at the schedule of each team. It's a great deal of strategy in Survivor, even as there are a lot of people in entries likely out in many of your pools with the Bengals and Ravens, AFC North hopefuls going down early, but never too early and never too ill-advised to strategize. Looking at a couple teams that we want to think twice about and proceed with caution, think long and hard about before we select them. The first team that I want to talk about are the Buffalo Bills hosting the Jaguars. And this really has nothing to do with how the Bills have looked so far this season. I think Josh Allen, my MVP pick this season after 2 weeks, has looked really great. The defense has held up. You've seen James Cook get involved in this offense. And while the wide receivers haven't really picked up all the slack that Stephon Diggs left behind, you're seeing the offense be able to put up points when needed. What really concerns me here is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are definitely playoff hopefuls coming in this season with their chances dwindling. This team is 0-2 and desperate. I think since 2000, only one team in the entire 20-plus year span, only one team has made the playoffs at 0-3. 0-3 is basically the kiss of death in the NFL, and teams will avoid it like the plague. The Jags are going to do every single thing in their power and their playbook to win this game because, again, you do not want to have 0 wins and 3 losses to start this season. Basically means their season is as good as over. So the Jaguars are going to be fighting tooth and nail to come at the Bills with everything they had. I think even with the Bills on a long week and a playoff caliber team, they're feeling good at 2-0. They are definitely feeling a lot better in the locker room than the Jaguars are at 0-2. I think the vibes in these two locker rooms and these two teams is completely different, and I think that desperation is going to make this game much closer than people think. Now, the Bills are a better team offensively and perhaps even defensively this year, but again, the Jaguars are 53 of the most talented human beings on this planet. They get paid to play football too, and they will be giving more effort than the Bills this week. I can guarantee that, and that makes me really wary to pick the Bills this week. Other team I want to talk about were the Jets hosting the Patriots. I think, obviously one of the reasons I'm a little bit hesitant about this game is that it is a divisional game. Even though the Jets are at home, this Patriots and Jets rivalry has been really unpredictable in the entire 21st century, really. I guess even in Tom Brady's era, this Jets-Patriots game has always been up in the air, especially without it. Who knows what's going to happen? I think the Jets have really underachieved in terms of expectations throughout this first 2 weeks, and certainly have unimpressed based on what we thought this new-look Jets team would appear with Aaron Rodgers at the helm of the offense and that incredible defense. The Patriots, on the other hand, are the other side of that coin, and they've looked much better through 2 weeks, just missing out on a 2-0 start as they went down to the wire in overtime against Seattle last week. Patriots find themselves at 1-1 and looking pretty solid with Jacoby Brissett filling in at quarterback until their third overall pick, Drake May out of UNC, is ready to fill his shoes. Their offensive line is playing much better than expected. They're getting a lot of production out of Ramondre Stevenson at running back. And as always with the Patriots, their defense is looking very solid. Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, they've been able to put up enough points to beat the Titans. But as we saw week 1, the Titans are not that great of a football team, do not have that dynamic of an offense, and are very prone to turnovers. I think the Jets capitalized on that. But this is going to be a very tight game against the Patriots. And the Jets should win. But through 2 weeks, they've shown they've shown me nothing on tape that would give me confidence to pick them this week. I think the best pick this week is likely the 49ers. They just came off an ugly loss against the Vikings. I think they're feeling a little vulnerable and inhuman, really, in this locker room here after being 1-1. After going up against Sam Darnold and the Vikings as 6-point favorites, losing that game. They're facing the Rams. I know it's a divisional opponent, but this comes under a rare circumstance where the Rams are without their two top wide receivers in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I feel it's going to be really hard for the Rams to beat this 49ers team if they're clicking on all cylinders. And I don't even think the 49ers have to be clicking on all cylinders to beat this Rams team, because this Rams team is riddled with injuries, not just at wide receiver, but even and especially at their offensive line. I think 3 of their key starters on the offensive line are out, and that's going to be really tough when you're going up against the 49ers defense and defensive line that is really tough, and highlighted by Nick Bosa at the end, that is very quick to get pressure on the quarterback. Now, I'll backtrack a bit and say that the Rams are 0-2 and they are home against a divisional opponent. That does raise some flags, but I think given the 49ers track record and the assumption that the 49ers will not fall below 500 this season, makes this a solid pick here. The Rams defense hasn't looked all that great this year. I can't think of many reasons to like the Rams here, but I guess it does concern me a bit that they are 0-2 and at home against a divisional opponent. Something that's certainly to think about, but the Niners matchup on paper looks like the best pick against the Rams. And the best value here is a team that you're not going to see very often on this list. Certainly not a team that you're going to see favored by a touchdown on this list, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders, who are hosting the Panthers this week. The Panthers have looked dreadful through the first 2 weeks, albeit that was with Bryce Young, the former number 1 overall pick, starting at quarterback in his sophomore season. Panthers are opting for a change, and they're bringing in the veteran Andy Dalton to don the snaps this week. And that concerns me a little bit, because Andy Dalton is a savvy veteran that has playmaking ability, has a higher football IQ just throughout his years in the league than Bryce Young, and has seen more exotic defenses in his time, especially with the Bengals when they were perennial playoff candidates. Now, the Raiders should win this game, again, favored by 7 points, because the Panthers have a lot more holes in their team, both offensively and defensively, outside of the quarterback position. But I think people are going to be buying into, I think this line of -7 for the Raiders and an odds to win of 77.3%. It's a little bit inflated just based on the recency bias of them going into Baltimore and winning. This could be a game that the Raiders are looking past, given that the Panthers have looked so poorly and they're riding a win in the high from beating one of the top playoff contenders in the Ravens. But nevertheless, you cannot deny the value that the Raiders bring this week versus the Panthers. You look at the Raiders' schedule, especially their out-of-division home games. I don't see a ton that I love for them. Not at home against Cleveland or Pittsburgh with the way Pittsburgh's been looking. Certainly not against Kansas City. Denver's a divisional game. Atlanta just took down the Eagles on Monday Night Football, and there's no predicting what that team will do. Jacksonville, by the end of the season, who knows how they'll look. I think this was the best spot for the Raiders. Certainly the only time I can guarantee that they're favored by 7 points, unless there's a significant injury to quarterback for any of these teams that they play. And then just to talk about the other picks, here come the Bengals again, and deja vu is the heaviest favorite this week against the Commanders that really should have lost to the Giants had the Giants had any available kicker in place. I really like the Bengals this week, and I know you've heard me say this before, but the reason is because of that 0-2 desperation. The Bengals with Joe Burrow, again, fighting for playoff spots in a very competitive AFC and AFC North specifically. And again, no team wants to go 0-3. You saw the Bengals really give the Chiefs a run for their money in Arrowhead. I have a feeling at home, after a slow start, the Bengals will pick it back up against a dreadful Commanders defense that led up 37 points to the Buccaneers in week 1, and they let the Giants put up 3 touchdowns in week 2, and I think that says enough. So I think the Bengals are a really good pick here. I think the Browns are a solid pick, given that they're -7. They have a pretty staunch defense against a Giants team that has really struggled on offense behind a poor offensive line. The, I think that's all I really need to say, given the Giants' performance and the fact that the Browns just went into Jacksonville and won really behind that solid defense in week 2. But again, the Giants are 0-2, and teams get desperate at 0-2, and it scares me a little bit. Now, same thing like the Rams. I'm not that scared of a desperate Giants team, given their play, but it is certainly something to consider there. I think the Bucks actually would be a pretty solid pick here at home. Again, facing an 0-2 team in the Broncos. The Bucks have looked really good coming off a big win in Detroit. This team looks to be clicking on all cylinders, but the NFL has been really weird this year where even the good teams have let down games. I wouldn't suspect it comes against the Broncos, as Bo Nix hasn't looked all that great against the offense. The passing offense and attack, specifically for the Broncos, has looked pretty poor. And the defense is not what was advertised, and certainly looking worse than it was last year. Not a lot of positives to talk about with the Broncos. Hard to see them winning this game on the road in Tampa, across the country. Bucks seem like a pretty good pick this week too. Now, I've already used my Seahawks pick week 1, but you get some opportunity and value here with them too if you haven't already, as they're facing a Dolphins team that is without Tua Tagovailoa, who had another concussion on Thursday Night Football last week. Skylar Thompson looking to, again, be the leader of this team under center. And this week, they get a long week playing on Thursday Night Football to practice and prepare with Skylar Thompson. But the Seahawks have started to look better. They got Jackson Smith-Njigba, the second-year wide receiver out of Ohio State, really involved in this offense, had a pretty positive win against a good Patriots defense in Foxborough. You get the Dolphins traveling across the country there too, which definitely does matter for the biological clock and circadian rhythm standpoint. Little things I know, but it's something that certainly matters in the NFL. And again, Seahawks seem like a pretty solid pick here too. Finally, you get the Chiefs facing off against the Falcons again, who just won on Monday Night Football. Plain and simple here, you're not taking the Chiefs on the road, only favored by 4.5. They're going to have plenty of opportunities this season where they're at home, which is already giving them 3 points, and playing much worse and much more predictable teams than the Falcons. The Falcons are one of those teams that you never know what they're going to put up week in and week out. They've got a great offensive line. They got a great defensive line, great guys in their secondary. They can put up points in a hurry, like you saw the 2-minute drill that Kirk Cousins was able to coordinate against the Eagles. And they can fall really flat in their face like they did week 1 against the Steelers. Chiefs should win this game, but it's not a good survivor pick this week. If you really hate all the other picks and you want to take them, it should work out, but by no means is it the best pick this week. And then for my pick this week, I hate to do it because there's some value with the Bengals down the road, but I really like them this week. Again, they're too good of a team to start 0-3. You saw them fight for their life against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs got bailed out, some would say, by flags and penalties, but the Bengals only lost by 1 to what is hard to argue to the best team in football on the road. You get the Bengals at home against a horrendous Commanders defense here and a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels for the Commanders, and I have a very strong feeling the Bengals win this game, and they will be my pick moving forward in Survivor Week 3. Best of luck to all of you, and I hope you win this Survivor League, move on, and I get to see you again next week.